Well, guys, it's good to see everybody here in the library rotunda. So welcome to our first research presentation for CERC, our Christian Education Research Centre. It's great to see people come together, have a bit of a nibble and a drink on something, but also we got the opportunity to profile a couple of our research projects. And some of the stuff we're doing is pretty exciting. So we've picked two projects today that we want to profile and report on. And the first of those, Kevin Petrie is lead researcher on, and it's an exciting one about faith development. So I'll flick over to you, Kevin, and look forward to what you're saying.
Thanks, Peter. And as you're probably all the same, you get pretty excited about your own research projects and think they're the most important in the world. But I've just thoroughly continuing to enjoy this particular journey. It began actually a few years ago with Association of Independent Schools grant between us and a school. And we were looking initially at this particular question of the relationship between school climate and faith engagement, because we know that school climate influences so many outcomes like well-being, academic achievement. In fact, almost everything you can think of in a school is positively influenced by it. So we took the scales belonging to school climate, student-teacher relationships, etc., developed some faith engagement scales and just found this really strong relationship between the two, which for us was really exciting because it indicated that if a school works on that school climate side, it's going to have a strong spin-off on the faith engagement side. So, for instance, if you're into correlational analysis and you look down at school connectedness as connected there with school impact on personal faith, 0.614 is, it's a strong connection. So for us, that was exciting. And then to even get more exciting, Peter Morey helped me into the world of structural equation modeling, and we played around with some models, which did indicate that as an aggregate, school climate had this significant impact as 0.39 on school influences on faith. And then we spent a bit of time looking at school climate itself and how did those variables interconnect. And, if a school was to say, we really just want to focus on 3 or 4 school climate variables, what would be the ones to really focus on? That helped to answer that question. Things like order, safety, and discipline, student-teacher relationships, belonging and connectedness. And probably you could have maybe guessed that anyway, knowing how important those variables are. So that led us to the current project, and that began in 2021. This time funded by the SPD, 26 schools across the South Pacific Division, and such interesting differences between each of those school communities, and really different results in terms of school climate and faith engagement. And our purpose this time, learning what we'd already learned, what can Adventist schools in the South Pacific Division do to enhance students' engagement in a personal faith journey. So it continued to involve surveys each year, but also focus groups. So we've run about 45 focus groups a year. We've had about 850 students involved, and just learning heaps. This is really from a student perspective, like what do students tell us make the biggest difference in their world? And of course, when we're talking about the student body, we're talking about such a diverse group. If you look at, this is 11 schools across Australia and New Zealand, when you've got percent who say we're either atheist or agnostic, quite a percentage of others who don't have a faith background at all, and really interesting unpacking school climate with the different groups. So, for instance, those not of a faith background or atheist have a lower view of school climate than those from a faith background, quite significantly. So that in itself adds these, really interesting variables in the mix. So when we've come to our focus groups, we've tried to focus on a particular aspect each year. Last year was a focus on students who didn't have a faith background at all, just sitting around the table seeing what they say. You know, what puts you off faith? What engages you? You know, what makes a difference? So in the time I've got, I just wanted to share student comments. This is what the students are saying in some particular areas, and deliberately picking out those things that are not just one-off statements, but form a part of a theme. So let's start off with this young lady from Longbourn College in New Zealand. And she says she's going through some family struggles. It's stopping me from focusing on school. I always get told to not let what I go through stop me, but it's very hard. You know, she's living away from mama. And then look at the last sentence. I guess all I want is for someone to encourage me each day and let me know that God is listening and God is there for me, because sometimes my faith just comes and goes. And a familiar theme there was students who just respond to a significant adult taking an interest. I guess we already knew that, but just confirmed from a student's perspective. And these are students here talking about what they appreciate about, you know, teachers, you know, always got time. Even if they have something on, they'll always stop for a few minutes. Sometimes teachers don't always know the answers, and so they sometimes open the Bible themselves and look at it and they don't rush you. I was interested in this middle one because it was indicative of a few students. And all the students said was, this one teacher just asked me sometimes, how are you doing? And just that personal interest, you know, wandering around in the playground, a teacher stops and just says, hey, how are you going, Tom? And the difference that makes. One teacher has taken a personal interest in my education journey. She's been pretty consistent. Every year she asks me how I'm going or what I'm doing and where I want to go. They, or some at least, suggest to us, you know, how about bringing up the topic out of class with us? As this year 6 from New Zealand said, no one's going to say or talk about their faith in the middle of class. I think if once a term the teacher came to you individually or something, it might help. Now, maybe not all students would respond to that, but I think there's maybe more than we realize. It's not like you're just going to admit you're struggling with your faith in front of the whole class. Or some teachers will strike up faith-based conversations in which they just ask for our personal opinion. So emphasizing that point about taking a personal interest in the student, but actually take an interest in their faith journey as well. You know, ask the question. Another theme that came through quite strongly, and you know, the students, or not many of them, use the term authenticity, but that's what they mean. And the fact that the teachers are so connected with God, and our Christian living teacher, for instance, has walked the journey with God for years and is willing to share her experiences so that we may get to know God better. So that's pretty special. One of the themes was the students appreciating teachers just honestly sharing their journey. As one student put, we love it when our teacher shares the downs as well as the ups, like when she's struggling. And, you know, particularly in that high school part, they see that as authentic, that you don't just have it all together. Or as one girl from a Hindu background said, they talk in what I believe and what similarities I have in my culture compared to the Christian world. And at this particular school, there must have been a few Hindu students, because 2 or 3 of them commented and just said they really appreciated the way that the staff actually took an interest in their religion too. That made them feel like, hey, they were important. They were valuable as well. Mr. S letting us ask questions and being okay with having differences. quite a strong theme with students saying, we just love it when we have the space in Bible or somewhere where we can just say stuff. And even if it's the wrong stuff, and the teacher doesn't make us feel like it's the wrong stuff, but just a safe place to explore ideas where we feel that the teacher's listening. Open discussions in classes about God and being able to ask questions that wouldn't usually be asked. When teachers are interested in our beliefs and other practices and show knowledge in various areas and do not dismiss our points, that also shows that teachers genuinely care about our faith journey. Teachers that share their journeys and do not force religion upon me and instead are curious about my faith influence me positively. So somewhere within our work as teachers, and I know we're talking here school teachers, but I think a lot of this applies to us, to be honest, and the students that we work with here. It's that openness to be able to just have these discussions that that we show as adults a curiosity too. It's not like we come across as actually we have this faith thing all together, because I don't think any of us here actually just always has it all together. We wanted to know what are the sorts of things, you know, apart from what you might do in school, what are the other sort of things that influence them positively? And one of the strong themes that surprised me in terms of how many students mentioned it was these out-of-class opportunities. You know, I know of one teacher, for example, who has a group of students that comes to his place, you know, once a month on a Friday night to study the Bible, or they'll have lunchtime classes, and it appears from many students that that's where they're happy to really unpack, not in the formal curriculum classes, but some opportunity outside it. And sometimes that's, you know, a church environment. And I was interested with our non-faith students, for example, how many of them engage, you know, with some of the church things beyond, you know, beyond the school. I was talking with a group of year 12 students at Carmel College last year, and none of them had a faith background. And I was just asking about their sense of belonging in the school. And they said, yeah, no, we don't feel any different. Like, you know, we don't feel we're treated different. We feel like, yeah, we belong, we're connected. And then I said, how about things outside of school? Like, do you go to any of the church activities? And they immediately looked at each other with a bit of a smile. They said, well, we tried, but that's where we don't feel we belong. That's where when we're going to, it's their territory and they all know each other. And so, no, we don't engage. Also wanted to find out from them, what are some things that put you off? Because we can't pretend it's, you know, all positive. So here's just a few. As one year 8 says, we learn about the same stories all the time and it gets boring. No one cares anymore. And it was that theme of, I heard that story. There's nothing new. Give me something new. Or as one year 12 said, be less pushy. Don't be quite as forceful. You might be interested to read these ones here. Year before last, our focus groups was on school discipline. And we were trying to see what the students say in terms of impact. The first one talking about what they see as double standards. The second one, sarcasm, was really something he was pushing back at. And how about the last one? When I had to go to detention, I had to write notes, and on it said, God wouldn't want me to wear that uniform. So, okay, I thought we were past those days somewhere, but maybe not. So maybe just, you know, last one. One of the questions we asked year before last, what could the school do to support you once you finish school? And it was interesting talking about perhaps being able to connect with the chaplain again. Maybe we need an after-sales service where we invite them to still come and connect in some way. As they said, they would probably have a deep, meaningful talk with them about how their journey is going. And we'd love to do research that tracks some of these students and, afterward. So look, if it's useful, I'll just leave that on the slide and you'd be welcome to have the slides. But they were just some of the top themes that came out, some of which we've covered there. Maybe just finally, I was reflecting on Avondale's opportunities. And I guess what made me think of it was a Bible class I was taking yesterday, biblical studies. And, we're looking at concepts such as spirituality, religion, faith, and a whole lot of terms. How do they intersect and how do they perhaps influence each other? And then we have a time where we just go around. They're welcome to say pass, and some do, and just ask them, so tell us about your journey. Where do you fit into this? And it's just fascinating listening to the sharing of, somebody mentioned, I'm at the lowest point in my faith journey that I have ever been, and here's why. Or somebody saying, where I'm at is trying to steer this line between my parents think this, and I did, but now I'm starting to think this. And how do I repack the bags myself? How do I figure out what it's going to look like for me? And I just realized again, what a massive privilege we have to work in a place where we can have conversations. We can find opportunities for those discussions that, I think are really important. And I'll leave it there. Yep. Happy for any questions.
Well, just get my computer to talk to everything. Great. Well, thank you, Kevin. That was, talk about interesting, isn't it? I particularly resonated with that whole sense of authenticity carries the day. And, just so many great lessons to be learned. So that particular project, sponsored by the SPD, is it coming to an end or is it ongoing or where is it at?
It's got this year and next year to run. So, it's towards the last third of it.
Well, super interesting stuff. So thanks for presenting on it. It's really interesting. Our second project that we want to profile and present on is actually a project that I'm involved in on service learning. Service learning is a really interesting thing to be engaged in. I love this sort of graphic sort of depicting that lots of hands can make a difference in the world. And I think about service learning and Avondale particularly. I think that, Avondale has this really rich history in service learning. And I think of the moto trips that, Jason's coordinated, the various Stormco's trips that ADRA have sponsored. I think of ACELAB Fireside Friday, where the ACELAB kids host the local high school kids. That was amazing. When we first set that up, Jason, I think we were expecting 100 kids to turn up and we ended up with like 300. So it's been hugely successful. And various research projects that we've done on service learning. I know in the master's program, for example, I think of a young lady who went out and got her kids in a rural town in Western Australia doing random acts of kindness in the local community in the town of Merredin. And there was, when she was writing up the report, she told the story of one lady who opened her blind at 7 a.m. in the morning to all this racket. And there's two of her year 6 kids out with dad's lawnmower mowing this lady's lawn. And yes, amazing outcomes in that project. Or Angela Gray up there at the Noosa School, who takes her year twos and they walk down to the local nursing home, and the kids sing to the oldies and the oldies read stories to the kids. And Angela measured the impact on the well-being of both groups and found that both groups had shot up, well-being has shot up tremendously. So, you know, service learning, it really is part of our DNA. So in CERC, we're actually establishing a service learning research hub that we would like to do research that's important to our stakeholders. I think the Adventist Church and particularly Adventist schools, service learning is a very important part of what they do. And so we would like to be involved in doing research in this area. And so to that end, I had the privilege of going up to, I think it was last Friday, up to Brisbane and drove out to a little place that I forget the name of now, but it was halfway to Toowoomba almost, and met with Jerry Unser and Heidi Mazz and Matt from the Gold Coast School and Carol Joy Patrick, and we had a bit of a team meeting about research. And I tell you, it's exciting stuff. The Darling Downs Christian School, it's the Darling Downs Adventist College now, having undergone a name change. I had to admit to Heidi, there's only 2 Adventist schools in Australia I've never been to. And unfortunately, the teachers were there from the 2. So I've never been to the Darling Downs School and I've never been to the Gold Coast School. So I've got to hurry up and change that. But this is Heidi, and Heidi's actually with us on Zoom there. And I've actually asked Heidi if she would just present to us and explain a little bit about the journey that their school's been on with respect to service learning. So over to you, Heidi.
Hi everyone, greetings from Darling Downs Adventist College, and Peter, I believe you're saving the best till last, so I'm okay with that. Peter's asked me just to share a little bit about our journey with service at Darling Downs Adventist College, and so I have a few talking points here that I wish to share with you. Our school started through a whole rebrand a couple of years ago, and through that we were rediscovering our identity as an Adventist school. And so as part of that, as a staff, we did a book club style read through the book education. And after that, we sat to articulate our culture statements. And they're now known as the Heart of DDAC. And after the staff articulated what they thought our culture statement should be, it went to students who gave us lots of quality feedback. And then that went to our parents, which gave us quality feedback. But in the end, we have these statements that are owned by our whole school community. And I share that with you because it includes our 3 core values. There's lots of things that we value, but we believe there are 3 that are core to who we are, that set us apart. And one of them is humble service. Service also made it through to, as part of our Building Cultural Capacity project, to our 5 school priorities, one of which is service, and we demonstrate Jesus' love by intentionally creating opportunities to give our time and effort in service to others, and acknowledging others when they serve us. And so as a school, we said this is something that's really important to us. But we also believe that beautiful statements mean nothing if they're not a reflection of practice. And so we then challenged ourselves for how do we look different because of our values. And so we didn't really know what we were doing out into the unknown. And we knew that if something was important, we were willing to throw money, time and space at it and then see what happens. And so we started having conversations about service as a staff and as a community, and especially in the primary area where there's not a whole lot that's specific to primary, we started talking about what does service learning look like, not just learning about service and not just doing service, but this whole concept of service learning. What does that look like when we start looking at it from a developmental perspective, when we start considering the social development of a child and where they view themselves in their community? And this is what actually connected us initially with Jerry's work and where he was heading. And over the last just over 12 months, the following took place at our school. In secondary, we allocated a dedicated period for service and culture development. A senior student leadership position was instigated that wasn't voted but appointed by the outgoing leader, and that was service ambassador. and they run our breakfast bucket, and they also profile service engagement. We implemented a service term into our sport calendar. And so each year level in secondary has one term in the year where they select from a range of service projects, and it might be going and doing activities with the kids at a kindy down the road. It might be working in the garden to then take that produce to cook and deliver to your soup kitchen. And we also asked our year 11 and 12s to engage in service through coaching and leading sport for the younger year levels. And just bonding, we wanted there to be more meaning to them. And so we looked at, if free will attendance at an overseas service project is our end game, how do we design our camps to lead up to that point? And so as part of that reevaluation of our camps and redesign, we ended up with the Year 10 Stormco as our Year 10 camp as the check-in point. We now offer students the option of a Cert 1 in service in Year 10, and this year we've launched our Duke of Edinburgh programs, which has a lot of service opportunity embedded within it. We also started celebrating when we saw others engaging in humble service, and that was part of our KITE Awards. KITE stands for kindness and thanking others, and that actually came out of one of our other core values, which is active kindness. And so we now celebrate and honour when we see others serving, and there's house points associated with that. Well, that's not the purpose. But it was at this point, as a leadership team, we decided that if we were serious about service being part of our DNA, then staff also need in service. We couldn't expect something of our students and not of ourselves. And so in Queensland, we have two Connect days per year. One is a conference day where all the staff come together across a conference for a day of rejuvenation and spiritual renewal. And then one day is a local where all staff on site have some form of retreat. And we started looking at that differently. We're given a budget from the head office to run that. And so we decided to engage in service on that day. And so we connected with Gatton Adventist Church, to run a Christmas in July for their soup kitchen. And so we had it set up as a game, and we called it The Amazing Grace. And staff chose teams and then opened their envelopes and had to spend the day working as a team on their aspect of the program, and they had to deliver it to the church at a certain time. And then at this, the evening program was optional to actually participate in the night. And when I surveyed staff after that program, I saw there was actually a distinct difference in the reflections of staff who had stayed for the evening program and those who had just done the day. It was an amazing team building exercise. But those who had stayed for the soup kitchen became involved in the story, and they were impacted quite significantly. And now I know more about service learning as a whole idea standalone. I now understand that they had engaged in service learning, and they had become part of this story. And they now, one of those staff members has now taken that and felt so connected to the soup kitchen, they've branched out into their service option that they provide for secondary students when they have that term in sport. And they now provide food for the soup kitchen each time they do sport. So it was a great team building event, but there was around that time that we had this aha moment with the work that we've been doing with Jerry, that there is a big difference between a service project or charity or doing good deeds and service learning. And the whole concept of being in story with someone and planning differently towards these acts of service and the journey towards any action is actually where the value is for our students and our people. And that's where our engagement with the narrative framework of service learning came in. And so what we've done now is we're engaging again in the same project, I guess you could say, for our staff, this Connect. But this time we're coming at it from a different angle, because we would like to model to our staff the difference between doing a great activity and a great good deed. And service learning. So we this time are not presenting staff with a project. We're actually engaging with those that have established the soup kitchen, and Grace and Lou or Jarvik, and we're bringing them up to our school. We're going to hear their story. We're going to hear the struggles they have, the things that have come out. We're going to hear about the people. We're going to meet the people. And then staff themselves are going to work out how we can come in story with these people as part of our Connect Day this year. And we believe that with this, we want staff to start planning in this way for their service projects as well. If we true to this whole idea of a narrative framework and service learning, they won't just go to sing to the people in the retirement village. They're actually going to go there for a far bigger purpose. They're going to go with a different mindset if we do the right setup and the right planning for them there, and that's going to carry through their lives. And so we believe that this narrative model and the work that we're wanting to engage in, combined with a simple age-specific curriculum, will refine what we're doing at our school and actually bring stronger outcomes for the effort that we're putting in. So that's our story. Peter, did you have any questions?
Yeah, look, first of all, you've got to say hats off to Heidi, and the school. I mean, it's amazing to do a review of your school and then say, okay, we want to go this way. When you listen to all those initiatives, like it's not half-baked, is it? They have just gone in boots and all. Now, I was working on another project with Kevin, and Kevin came out with the best phrase in an email. We were working on a document at the same time we were getting Maddie to do the desktop publishing of it because we had to send it away. And Kevin's phrase was, Maddie, thanks for helping us to build the plane while we're flying it. And that's a little bit what I feel about Toowoomba, in that these guys have just gone in boots and all, but they're actual, they haven't got a service learning product that they're saying, right, let's do this. They're actually constructing it on the fly. And that's where we'll introduce Jerry in a minute. We'll have a little chat to him. But Heidi, just a quick reflection. Now that you've sort of been in this journey for like a year, how do you think it's going? Do you sense a difference in the school?
Oh, there is a very distinct difference in our college, and it's probably a range of things that have created that. And though I will say there is a difference in our data when we look at our school improvement data in our Adventist identity actual scores. And I'm cautious to celebrate those, because if we celebrate those, we've got to take responsibility for the other areas, because there was some surprising results in other areas. But it is interesting that there's 3 distinct areas where we saw an increase in our data. And one is, I'm just looking at it on my other screen, one is service engagement, quite significant increase there. One is understanding service, and also the surprise, but not so surprising when you look at the way that we're wanting to look at service learning, is the understanding of social justice. And I actually see that that's where we're going to see significant trends, because part of the narrative framework is actually looking at the situation when you're coming in story with someone and seeing where is there an injustice here that we can contribute to resolving.
Thanks, Heidi. I must admit, I look at Heidi there, I have a certain sense of nostalgia, because I remember when Heidi was here at Avondale and the honours project she did, and it was amazing. Now to meet up with her many years later, and here she is principal of a school and just a massive change agent. I mean, it's a very exciting journey we're all on. But Heidi, we appreciate in your busy principal day, you spending the time with us. What we're going to do now, though, is that I'd just like to introduce you to Jerry Unser. Now, Jerry is actually, he is working at the Gold Coast Christian School, which is the Adventist school on the Gold Coast. He's their wellbeing coordinator. He's had, previous to that, many years working at Emmanuel College. Jerry did tell me what his title was at that school, but essentially he brought together service and outdoor ed and all sorts of stuff together in Emmanuel College. But now he's at the Gold Coast School. And Jerry has been working on an EDD in service learning, and he's also been working with Petrie, a previous council member for us, and in this whole area of service. Because one of the things that you've got Heidi's schools on this journey, but what do we actually do to help Heidi and her school pull this off so it really works well? Because it's a very complex thing. So, Jerry, if you were there, I'd like to if you would start talking, Jerry, then the camera will actually flick to you. And
Okay.
there you are, man. Now, Jerry is looking very professional in his tie. I want to tell you, this is one of the first times I've seen Jerry in a tie, but well done.
I know, yeah.
You've made a good impression on
Yeah,
me.
going full. This is big. This is a big moment.
So, Jerry, when we think of the school, Heidi's school, and we think of the whole service learning initiative, you've had a huge amount of background. You've gone into the research. You've sort of been on an academic journey, understanding service learning, as well as being a practitioner in a school. So what would you like to tell us about service learning, and what sort of needs to happen for schools like Heidi's to really pull it off well?
Yeah, it's kind of the question we would all love to know, wouldn't it be? I think, pulling back what you started with, Peter, when we look at all the things that Avondale had listed there, all the service opportunities, what I found is that when we look at any Adventist school, every single one, there are service activities going on. And it's similar with many of our churches and all of our youth departments. Services in the Seventh Adventist DNA. I think that's something that we can accept. And I was involved as a young chaplain in service with Stormco and that whole movement of getting people engaged in communities. But like Heidi said, switching to that, as we went on, you start realizing that there is this field of service learning, which is different than service activity. So the research has been significant in the field, and what they found is that service is great, involving students, young people in service is a positive activity that yields good outcomes. But if you become more intentional about that, if you integrate service into your academic curriculum, if you can prepare intentionally for your service activity, engage students in that preparation, help students own the journey, and then ask them to critically reflect on their journey, you get better outcomes. You get more transformative trips. So the research in service learning is all about the meshing of service and the learning part that comes before the trip, during the trip, or before the experience, during the experience, after the experience, because it can be the same thing with an international trip to Cambodia as the year 2 kids at Noosa that are going down to the aged care facility. So the principles of service learning are the same. So I think that's the big thing to get, is that we actually know the research is there on how to do it well. The research is really clear on that. And Peter, you can show those slides now. Not that there's much to say, just a sentence there. We know what makes more effective experiences. So that is really evident in the research. It's been there for a long time. The problem is, just go to the next slide. The problem is we don't have a simple, clear approach to actually teaching service. We know what makes a good project. Does that make sense? Here's all the things that contribute to a good project, but how do you teach that? What do you actually go through with students, with your trip or with your team, or with your class? What do you actually do in preparation to make sure that you're going to get transformative outcomes, to give you the best chance of making that a life-changing experience? Because if we're not aiming for life-changing experiences, we're wasting our time. I'll just say that. again, in case there's any teachers in the room. If you're not doing a service project, or if you're not doing a service experience and not expecting that to change your students' perspectives, and if you're not going into it wanting to change your own perspective, you're wasting your time. You can sit in a classroom with a lot less risk and a lot simpler program and use that mode of learning. But if you're going to go to experiential learning, like, just pay attention to what makes it good. Oh, and we have that, but what we don't have is a way to teach it. So there are two things that come in to the equation. Maybe you can go to the last slide, because I'm not going to talk very long. What we know from the research is here are all the things that make service learning effective. What we have done is we've looked at that research in detail, and then we've decided there are 4 areas that can apply to a service learning teaching curriculum. I'll just quickly say there, concepts of reciprocity, justice, cultural humility, and critical reflection. So those are big areas in the service learning research, and they're wide areas to cover, but they're distinct and discrete areas. So we look at those and we go, well, you know what? We could probably build some sort of framework around those 4 areas. But what we've got to understand is that as Christian schools, as Adventist educators, we approach each of those areas from a Christ-centered worldview. So what does that look like? And that's been the magic. What does it look like when you look at the research? We put it into a framework, but then we look at those elements of the framework through a Christian worldview. And what we've been finding and working with Heidi at her school and Matt Moore at Gold Coast Christian College is that this is something teachers can get. This is something that we can understand in a way that's easily translatable even to a year 2 class. So we're working on that framework. We're not going to show it to you. I'd love for you to keep your eyes out and look for a more completed program to come out. But that's our partnership with Avondale, and you, Peter, have been key in driving that. And I'll let you chat about where that's headed. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. I mean, Jerry brings just a huge amount of experience, but with the fact that he's also, been swimming deeply in the literature, he really brings some academic know-how and some experience to it. So what we're doing is that through our research centre, essentially we're going to work to finalise the theoretical framework. I mean, Jerry's done a lot of work in this. We're looking to develop a Peter 12 service learning curriculum with those elements of leading teachers through what do you do prior to any sort of experience, how do you handle the experience itself, and then how do you handle the debrief and the reflection that occurs back at the school afterwards. And so we believe that we can come up with a curriculum approach, and starting in prep, kindergarten, right the way through to year 12. We then want to pilot this curriculum in schools, and then we want to research the outcomes. So I'm going to be walking from here directly across to a meeting with Maddie, who's working with me. We plan to put in for an innovation grant in the SPD Innovation Fund to fund this process. And we will have a team made up of myself, Jerry, Heidi, Matt, and Carol Joy Patrick. And it's a really exciting project. And wouldn't it be great if Adventist schools ended up with a service learning curriculum that they could implement? Obviously we've got 2 schools that we're piloting, but Jean Carter has been on the phone. We've been chatting to her about it. She's very keen for us to come up with something that can then go out to the other schools. So look, it's our time to finish, but it's both these projects, whether it's the faith engagement project Kevin's been talking about or the service learning one, these sort of projects just bring life to research centres, and there's nothing like working on these projects that you really feel are going to make a big difference in the world. It's exciting stuff. Maybe not as exciting at midnight when you're still trying to write it all up, but they are fantastic projects. So I want to say thanks to Heidi and Jerry. Looking forward to continuing working with you guys. and see the service learning thing go forward. And thank you very much to Kevin for the work he's been doing on that project. And I was in the North New South Wales School Company Board meeting on Monday, and they were talking about this very project very enthusiastically. So I think we ought to kick it down the road, Kevin, and continue it. So because it's an exciting thing. So look, thank you very much for the presenters. We'll call our meeting to a close. Thanks for attending. There is still boxes over there that have got food, so grab something on your way out, and we'll see you next time.